Okay, a good tavach, a freilich tavach. There's a beautiful teaching from the Baal Shem Tov. The Alter Rebbe shared, actually about the Baal Shem Tov, that the Alter Rebbe shared. The Alter Rebbe said, it says in the Gemara, that once the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the only place Hashem has is a place of halacha. A place where halacha is studied, that's a place where Hashem has. So the Alter Rebbe said about this, that the word halacha also means movement. Whereas Hashem is in a place that moves you, in a place of inspiration. The Alter Rebbe said that when someone is in the place of the Baal Shem Tov, when the place of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, when the place of the students of the Baal Shem Tov, which is the place of inspiration, that's where Hashem is present. So on that note, I want to share with you a story I just heard a few days ago. Michael Vyshetsky shared this story in Yiddish. I'll do my best to share with you to you and translate it for you. Thank you so much. Chaim Barach. Michael Vyshetsky shared that a story that he heard from his father. The previous Rebbe was living, after his imprisonment, he was living in an apartment in Leningrad, today in Petersburg. And this apartment had a small dining room, enough to fit maybe 15 people. So when the previous Rebbe would speak on Shabbos afternoon after Mincha, there were only 15 people allowed to come in because that was as many people that could fit. But everyone else would stay in the rest of the apartment, in the living room, wherever it was. The door was closed. And although they couldn't hear, they would wait for the Hasidim who were inside to come outside and to share with them what the Rebbe had said. So it's one Shabbos afternoon, and the Rebbe is talking to those few Hasidim who were chosen, the elite group that was chosen to be there in the room with the Rebbe. And this guy comes in, clean-shaven guy, who doesn't look religious at all. And he's wearing this kippah, like those bar mitzvah kind of kippahs, or, like, doesn't look like it's something he usually wore. And he comes in, he says, "Where is the Rebbe?" And they pointed to the room, which was closed. So he starts banging on the door. He's banging on the door, and the previous Rebbe wasn't just in the middle of talking. He was in the middle of a Hasidic discourse. When the Rebbe says a Hasidic discourse, I don't know if the right word is in a trance, but he is definitely in touch with something above this world, I'll say it that way. And yet the previous Rebbe interrupted the discourse, and he said, the emotion, this guy should be allowed to enter. And when the man entered, he stood behind the previous Rebbe. When the previous Rebbe finished the discourse, this man lunges to the Rebbe, and he says, "Rebbe," he screams out in a loud voice, "I'll do anything. I'll do anything. Just tell me what I need to do. I'll do anything." So what had happened was, this man had a young 3-year-old daughter who was gravely ill. And he had been in the hospital with his wife and his other children. And the doctors had given his daughter a day or two to live. While he and his wife are mourning the impending doom, this guy in the hospital notices them, sees how distraught they are. He says to him, "Why don't you go ask for a blessing from a great holy special man that I could introduce you to?" He said, "Okay." And so they went together to the previous Rebbe, and the previous Rebbe said that he shouldn't worry. She'll live long life, and there's going to be good news. He was so encouraged by those words that when he came back to the hospital, he was in a completely different mood than the rest of his family. Everyone else who was gathered was so upset, including other members, not just of his immediate family. Other people came also to be in the hospital in the last moments of his daughter. And they were all thinking he has simply gone insane. Why else would he be joyful and happy when his daughter's in her last moments? They just thought he had gone insane. But after a while, the head doctor that was part of her case, comes in, and he does some examination, and he says, the crisis, I don't know how this happened, but the crisis is over. Your daughter is going to be okay. As soon as he hears these words, he's ecstatic. He runs back to the previous Rebbe's apartment in Leningrad, in Petersburg. And that's when he asked the Rebbe, what should I do? Now, think about it. The Hasidim, Rabbi Vashetsky was saying, we're thinking, here the Rebbe has, so to speak, a big fish he caught. This guy was ready to go on fire and water, do anything. He had seen a miracle with his eyes, a miracle that saved his daughter's life. He was ready to do anything. What would the Rebbe ask him to do? So the previous Rebbe said to him, Dorten wo die Chassidim verbringen, dorten sollst du sein. Whenever the Chassidim verbring, that's where you should be. He didn't ask him to keep Shabbos, to keep kosher, to pray, to put on tefillin. He says, Dorten wo die Chassidim verbringen, dorten sollst du sein. Wherever the Chassidim verbring, whenever they verbring, you should be there. And what happened was that after a year or two, this man suddenly, without having discussions about various mitzvahs, just being in the company of the Hasidim, that already put him in a better place. And automatically was fully committed to Torah and mitzvahs and to the work of the previous Rebbe, without anyone having to mention him specifically about any specific mitzvah. Just being in their company had such an impact on him, which is the great value of getting together from Melaveh Malka and sharing a Hasidic story. It does something. I'm going to share with you an incredible story. This is a story that was shared firsthand to Rabbi Ido Weber, who shared with the Far Chabad magazine, by a man named Menashe Zanishvili. I don't know why this is, but many people who are who are living in Georgia, in Georgia, in Russia, have Elishvili, Shvili in the end of their name. So Menashe Zanishvili went to study in New York at the age of 14 years old in 1973, together with 19 of his friends. The parents had sent them from Israel. They had immigrated to Israel, and they sent their children to study in New York. They were studying in the yeshiva in Ocean Parkway. And Menashe would always, whenever it was far away from home, it wasn't close to his mother's kitchen and everything. But he was very encouraged by the warm atmosphere that the yeshiva administration gave to them in Ocean Parkway, and he also was able to be with the Rebbe on many occasions. And whenever the Rebbe would give out wine, the Rebbe would give out wine at the end of Rosh Hashanah, at the end of Sukkot, at the end of Pesach, at the end of Shavuos. Whenever the Rebbe would give out wine, Menashe would send some of the wine in the mail to his father. So this time, it was a year earlier after he arrived in New York. It was the last day of Pesach, 1974. And as the Baal Shem Tov established the tradition, we'll have the Mashiach Seudah, the meal of Mashiach, at the end of the holiday, with the matzah and the wine. And afterwards, as the Rebbe distributed wine to everyone there. And the Rebbe, when Menashe came by, the Rebbe said to him in Hebrew, he told him 5 words. Send this wine to your father. Menashe's surprised. He sent the wine to his father all the time. But here the Rebbe is telling him to send wine to his father. Suddenly, why is the Rebbe saying this? What's going on with his father? And the Rebbe said it again. Send this wine to your father. And he still is shocked. He doesn't answer the Rebbe. And finally, the Rebbe says it a 3rd time with a big smile. Send this wine to your father. And Menashe sees the Rebbe smile. He's encouraged. But there's some kind of alert goes on in his mind that this is not there's not going to be something pleasant. And immediately he goes out to a payphone, and his parents didn't own a phone in their home. It wasn't so common for everyone to have a home in those days in Israel in 1974. And so the only person he could call was the neighbors of his parents. He calls the neighbor's house, and he asks them, how's my dad doing? And the response was, your father's not at home. What does that mean? Where is he? Where is he? He's not home yet, but he'll be home soon. So the next day, he was very concerned. Why isn't the guy being upfront with him? Is that okay or isn't he okay? So he calls the next day. He says, your father's okay, but he's not at home. What does that mean? You call the next day again, and the guy again says, your father's not at home. Don't worry, he'll be okay. He says, listen, if you don't tell me what's going on with my father, I'm going to call you on every 10 minutes and you're not going to get rid of me. I need to know what's going on with my father. So finally, the neighbor says, your father's going to be home shortly and he'll call you. I'll let you speak to him directly. That day, he's walking around in Crown Heights and he sees another man who had also emigrated from Georgia, from Georgia, and he had just arrived in New York from Israel. So someone who he knew his family, and he asked him, do you know what's going on with my father? He said, I saw your father. Your father was, his head was bandaged, his hand was bandaged. He said, was he walking? He says he was walking, but he was bandaged. And he was walking around. He sent regards. So he's very nervous. What's going on? And finally, he found out the story. What happened was that his father's name is Daniel, and he was working in Israel as a cab driver. And he was driving the chief rabbi of Georgia, Rabbi Rafal Alashvili. Rafal Alashvili and his wife needed a ride to Jerusalem. Day after Passover, spring day, nice weather in Israel, everything's going fine. And they drive all the way to Jerusalem. When they get to Jerusalem, they're on the bottom of this hill, and this huge bus, is careening down the hill. The driver has lost control of the car, and Daniel, because he's a cab driver, he knows right away that this is dangerous. So he stops his taxi, and he screams at the passengers they should jump out of the bus because it's so dangerous. This guy, whatever's going on, that the driver's not have control. You should jump out of the bus. So he screams them, jump out of the bus, jump out of the bus. And while he's screaming, jump out of the bus went straight into his car. And so what happened was the paramedics come, and the paramedics see that Menashe is no longer alive. They cover him with a sheet, and they go take care of Rabbi Elishvili, who was slightly injured. And they come back to where the body of Menashe was, and he's not there. There's no one under that sheet. And in those days, it wasn't common, but it happened often that people would steal bodies for body parts. So the paramedics were concerned. Where is the driver? And Menashe said, hey guys, I'm over here. What? How we covered you with a sheet? You weren't alive. What's going on? How are you here? What are you talking about? What's going on? He's just walking around as if nothing happened. He did need to be bandaged, etc., but he was fine. And so when he heard the story from his father, of course, he sent the wine to his father. And 2 months later, he was in Israel and he heard the story from his father firsthand. His father says, I woke up and I see my face is covered with a sheet. And the doctors don't know how I survived, but I survived. And I made a calculation. What time was it when the bus hit the taxi? It was 9:30 in the morning Israel time. That was the exact moment that his son Menashe was by the Rebbe at 2:30 in the morning, New York time, when the Rebbe said, send this wine to your father. So they realized that he went with his son that when he went to Israel to the mechanic to check out their car, but their car was completely totaled, complete just a sheet of metal, nothing to do with that for that car. And they realized the impact and the miracle of the words of the Rebbe, send this wine for your father. I'll show you another story. This story is about Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Pinson, the Rebbe's emissary to Nice in France. He got married around this time of year, 1974, on the 14th of Tammuz, to the Altine family. And in those days, there were a lot of refugees living in Tunis, including his parents. His parents, through the UNRRA, United Nations Rehabilitation Relief Administration, had arranged for the international law that refugees are able to come to a they were able to come to Tunis, many to Nice, and so many refugees were there, and they and so his father, um, uh, because his son was engaged to get married, he wanted to come to New York for the wedding. But the problem was he didn't have a proper visa, proper passport, he didn't have citizenship. He was living in Nice as an immigrant, as a refugee. So he was able to stay there, but they did give him a passport to travel, but when it was very complicated to use the passport. Whenever the passport was almost expiring and he wanted to renew the passport, they would tell him, it's not expired yet. Why are you coming now? Now, when it expired, he had to wait till the authorities would renew the passport. But here his son is getting married, and he wanted to be by the wedding, of course. So several months before the wedding, he already made an effort to get his passport renewed so he could travel to New York for the wedding. So 4 months go by, and the passport does not arrive. And he contacts the ministry of, and he asks them what's going on. Why am I getting back my passport? So they told him that we could give you a visa to leave, but once you leave, you can't come back. He wasn't officially a citizen. I don't know exactly what the issue was, but he wasn't a citizen. And they said, you could leave, but you can't come back. Maybe because he was there for so many years. But the whole time that Ray Pinson's parents lived in Nice, they were not citizens. They were just living there as part of this UNRRA agreement, international agreement of immigrants to stay in various countries. They were allowed to stay there, but they couldn't become citizens. That's what happened their entire life. So when he wanted to go to the wedding, they said, we're not giving you a passport. You can give you a visa to leave, but you can't come back. Now, I forgot to mention that in addition to his son's wedding, his daughter was also getting married. His daughter, Fega Tzivia, was going to get married on the 7th of Tammuz to Yosef Yitzchak Hecht. And so he has a son getting married on the 14th of Tammuz, his daughter getting married on the 7th of Tammuz. It's a real big reason to be in New York for both weddings of his children. But here he has this dilemma. Should he go to the wedding and not come back? He decided things a different way than most people would. It wasn't about being by his children's weddings. It was about the mission of the Rebbe. The Rebbe had sent him to Nice, and if he couldn't endanger his mission and leave, he has a mission from the Rebbe. So if he can't come back, he's not going to go. It's a kind of sacrifice of Hasidim of a different era, different level. But it was by him obvious. I'm not going to go. How can I leave the mission of the Rebbe? That's what he decided. His wife did have her passport, and she did make it to New York, and she was in the audience with the Rebbe. And she said to the Rebbe in the audience that she had with her Rebbe before his sister's wedding, she said to the Rebbe that she wants a blessing since her husband can't make it to his daughter's wedding. Could she have a blessing that he can make it to her son's wedding, which is going to happen another week, on the 14th of Tammuz? And the Rebbe responded, "Zu der Chasna wird kommen. To this wedding is going to come. He's going to come to this wedding. Why not come to the next wedding? He's going to come to this wedding." The Rebbe just said that, and the next day he got he was contacted by this same office of the Minister of Interior Minister, whatever the title was. You can go. Here's your passport. What changed? He submitted a request 4 months before, and they already said no. They told him what changed was that the Rebbe said, "So der chasna veter kumen." To this wedding is going to come, not to the next wedding. It'll be that one too. So der chasna veter kumen. Rebbe said, and that's what happened. Share another two stories that Rabbi Pinson shared. This is from an audience from a interview he gave to the Par Chabad magazine. He said that by his wedding, there was a professor that came from France to be by his wedding, and one of his parents, people close to his family. His name was Hubert Lombroso. Hubert Lombroso was one of the top 12 professors in his field in France, and he wrote extensively on physics. And today in France, his work is considered basically it's you have to study his work in order to graduate college. His work, he's a senior world-renowned professor, and he wrote all these textbooks, and they are considered till today the textbooks you need to graduate college in physics to become. And so he was in an audience with the Rebbe, and he told the Rebbe, we need another emissary of the Rebbe in Nice. I think it would be a good idea to send this guy after he gets married back to Nice. And when he came to visit the Rebbe, he gave the Rebbe his first book. This book was not successful. No one was paying attention to this book. And the Rebbe leafed through his book. And the Rebbe, this is, a very advanced book on physics. The Rebbe leaves through and the Rebbe gives him a few suggestions how to change the book. And he listens to the Rebbe, he changes the book. And today the book has already been translated into 20 languages. And again, it's considered his work is studied the world over. And just after the Rebbe gave a few suggestions and leafed through the book. Interesting thing, another gentleman, part of the Chabad Center there in Nice, wanted to move from Monaco to Nice. Monaco is very close to Nice, but not close enough. He wanted to actually live there was no Jewish environment there then. Now there's a Chabad in Monaco. He wanted to move to Nice. So he came to an audience with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said to him he could move to Nice, but he should leave his business in Monaco. He told the Rebbe, the commute is crazy. And the Rebbe said the commute from Monaco to Nice is 22 minutes. Sorry, my wife says it's called Monaco, not Monaco. Okay, but it's still 22 minutes. Till today, the train, no matter how much the trains have developed, as the Rebbe said then, it's still 22 minutes. Rabbi Pinson said that when the Rebbe would go home on Friday night, the Rebbe would be followed by 3 yeshiva students. The Rebbe's custom was, for whatever reason, the Rebbe would not usually look back at who was following him. Just for security reasons, they wanted people to accompany the Rebbe. And these 3 students would come. But one time, he said it was his turn. Rebbe's emissary in West Hartford, what's his name? No? Rabbi Gopin. Rabbi Gopin was in charge then of appointing who was going to go follow the Rebbe home. And he was studying in a also halachically, there's a reason not to go by yourself at night. Anyways, especially a tzaddik, especially a Torah scholar. Either way, so that Friday night, the Rebbe would stay several hours after the evening services in 770 until he would go home. And so the Rebbe is walking home, and this time the Rebbe does look back at the yeshiva students and somewhat signaling them, giving some kind of and they don't know what the signal is about. And the Rebbe is not walking with his usual pace. He was walking very slow, and they don't know what's going on. And finally, one of the boys realizes that he has in his pocket something that he's not allowed to carry on Shabbos. And he takes that out of his pocket, and then the Rebbe continues. Looking back, the Rebbe then continues with his regular pace. One more story.
2.
2 more stories. Chaim Rav. Bottom line is like this. Bottom line is, night the 17th of Tammuz. 17 is America equivalent to the word good, because even though calamity happened on this day, but God is a loving father and doesn't give a calamity, doesn't give a catastrophe because a father wouldn't harm a child unless there was something that the father wanted to give the child. And the only way to give this better, greater good to the child would be through this externally appearing, feeling negative event. So this event of the 17th of Tammuz, which is beginning of the 3 weeks of mourning for the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, actually is in deeply the time of absolute love of Hashem to Jewish people. So much love that is worth it, God forbid, to go through all of the tragedy to get to the greater love, the everlasting love and happiness that will happen when Mashiach will come, when the 17th of Tammuz will be transformed to a day of celebration and joy and happiness. When Mashiach comes, we'll see then how the whole descent and the whole purpose of the destruction of the temple was only in order for the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash to come in Mashiach. This is the whole point of why this happened. On that note, as Baruch requested, I'll do one more story. This is a story that Rabbi Malka Ashkenazi would often share. When Israel established its independence on the 5th of Iyar, and the last members of the 100,000 soldiers of Great Britain evacuated back to Britain, and Israel established itself as a state. There began an immediate a war on every hilltop, on every police station, and there was one road between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem where on that hilltop, on where that road is, there was a police station that was taken over by the Arabs. And the problem was that the Jews in Jerusalem had no way of getting any supplies at all. No supplies, because the only way to get supplies was through this road. The Arabs were governing the road. And so you couldn't bring a diaper, you couldn't bring food, nothing. So the Red Cross was pressuring Ben Gurion to evacuate all the Jews in Jerusalem because they're all gonna starve. So Ben Gurion didn't know what to do. Ben Gurion sought the advice of Rabbi Herzog, first chief rabbi of Israel. Rabbi Herzog didn't know what to do either. So he asked the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, hey, you're the Mar Da'asa, you're the rabbi of this town, you give a halachic ruling, what should happen here? So Rabbi Zelig Bengis, the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, he said the following: the shoulders you have to say what he said is amazing. Absolute faith in Hashem. He says, listen, tells Ben Gurion, in our prophecies in the Torah, it talks about the destruction of Jerusalem once by the Babylonians, once by the Romans. 2 destructions, not 3. Not 3. Jews have been in Jerusalem, and Jews will stay in Jerusalem. That's what he said. And the Jews stayed in Jerusalem. And then the Palmach, the Israel Defense Force, in its infancy was called the Palmach, they, a few weeks later, managed to create a new road, it's called the Burma Road, where they were able to bring in supplies and rescue all the Jews in the new city in Jerusalem. That's what Rabbi Benga said. Jerusalem was destroyed twice, won't be destroyed again. And just like the Torah prophesied the destruction of the temple, the first temple and the second temple, which according to many opinions, the breaking of the walls began on the 17th time of both this first temple and the second temple, according to many opinions. Anyway, so this event that happened 17th Tammuz happened on number 17, the good day of Tammuz. Why is it the good day? Because this day is all about the coming of Mashiach. It's all about the descent for the purpose of the ascent. It's about the destruction for the sake of the everlasting good, the coming of Mashiach. May Hashem help us see this happen tonight, immediately. We'll see the emes and the chama, the true nechama, the true comfort for all the suffering and sadness of our people in the exile. The car of Mamish, and as everyone said, Mashiach comes, we're going to feel so good. And we're going to wonder, why will we feel so good? It's because we'll feel the goodness of coming Mashiach. That's how we'll realize Mashiach is here, because all of a sudden we'll feel so good. will feel, as today is the 17th of Tammuz, feel the goodness of the 17th of Tammuz, the higher goodness that this day is really about. We see it happen immediately. A good Woche should be a freiliche Woche. Wir hoffen, wir schaffen uns zum Gemeinden Chaim.